Hello and welcome. I am so glad you could join me today. I hope you are so ready to dive into some horsey science because that is what we're going to do. I want to share something with you that I recently started implementing in my horse care routine. It's something that I've been implementing in my own life for years now. It's been in my dog's lives for years now, but I've just recently gone all the way down the research rabbit hole, figuring out what kind of benefits it can have for our horses as well. And specifically, sport horses is where I started my research. I will preface by saying I am not a scientist. I am not a veterinarian. I'm not even a professional. I am just a lady who's super obsessed with horse care. And I always want to think that I'm doing my best to support my horse. And I always want to be sharing tools and things that work for me. So I am borrowing other people's research to present this on their behalf. I have not done any real experiments backed in science myself, but I will share everything that I found with you, and hopefully you find it as fascinating as I do, and hopefully it's something you feel like you can use in your horse's life. So I'm going to share some slides with you. Hopefully they will help keep me on track. If I fumble and repeat myself, forgive me. I'm not the best at presentations, but this information needs to be shared. So let's dive in. So first I want to talk just a little bit about the paradigm shift that we're really seeing in the horse world right now. Horses and humans throughout history, our relationship has very much been them doing our bidding. They've been tools for us. They've been our transportation. They have been our farm animals. We really use them to carry out tasks for us. And I think that everything that has grown in the horse world was kind of colored by that for a really long time. A little bit of a backstory: I grew up around horses. Pretty sure I was on a horse before I could walk, though I can't remember that far back. My grandma always made sure horses were available for us when we were kids, and I'm super grateful for that. I actually took a full on break from any sort of horse involvement all the way through my 20s as I focused on my career. And then I re entered the horse world in my late 20s. So I experienced about a decade gap of learning there, and coming back to learning again, was quite the experience because I learned that so much of the stuff that I was taught as a kid was not only like borderline atrocious, but, not being used anymore, and why it wasn't being used anymore. And that was super fascinating to navigate. The past 50 years have been crazy as far as developments in the horse world goes. And a really big reason for that is that there have been so many advances in equine medicine, like Western style veterinary medicine, like real science kind of deal. My horse Odie actually just got diagnosed with kissing spine. We were talking with the vet the day that we were doing radiographs, and I was like, "Wow, I think it's so cool that kissing spine isn't a retirement sentence anymore. That we have so many tools we can use now to make them feel more comfortable." In extreme cases, people are doing surgeries now to fix this problem for their horses. And she was like, "If you think that's wild, like we've only been doing radiographs of horses' spines in general for the past like 30 years." So a lot of these care tactics and our willingness to resolve horses' problems instead of just sort of cast them aside and say they're lame. They're no longer of use to me, so I'm not going to deal with the problem anymore. I just am not going to ride them. That mentality is slowly shifting. So we're not only being more proactive in taking care of these problems for our horses, we're finding preventative ways to, prevent them from happening. We're seeing a huge uptick in natural horse care information being spread around. Stuff like body work, stuff like acupuncture, medicinal herbs. These used to be things that were only practiced by like, the hippies or the spiritual woo woo people. And now, they're widely regarded as very beneficial practices for sport horses, and they're used by top trainers. So a lot of the stigma surrounding natural horse care is starting to go away, which is super cool. You also see a lot more people talking about compassionate horsemanship. This is like a movement right now. People that are willing to set aside their agenda and really meet their horse where it's at, to really focus in on their communication and their relationship, which is a beautiful thing. But again, something that's relatively new in the Western horse world. So I think a lot of this definitely comes from the fact that we have more access to information than we've ever had before. A lot of these professionals and non-professionals are sharing this information via social media, and we're all on social media all the time. So it's super powerful to have that as a platform to connect with other horse people and no longer be limited to what's being offered in your area as far as trainers and clinics and stuff like that. You can take courses online now and learn pretty much any sort of training modality. You can learn about nutrition, you can learn about fitness, biomechanics. All this stuff is so available to us now. But I feel like the direction that we're headed in is really simplifying things. I think it's a human tendency to overcomplicate things and to put more things on top of problems instead of taking them back to the root and really figuring out how we can support from the ground up. And it doesn't get a whole lot more simplistic and from the ground up than what I want to talk to you about today, which is water. So, fun fact, your horse is approximately 70% water. You are also approximately 70% water. A horse drinks about 10 to 15 gallons of water a day. Obviously, strenuous exercise requires more hydration. Another human problem that we cause for horses is giving them dry feeds and grains that are higher calorie. A lot of us are soaking these or like implementing mash so that they are better hydrated as they're going into the horse's system. But one of the big things we have to look out for in dehydration is impaction colic, which is terrifying, obviously. I mean, this is like stuff that would keep me up at night. The thought that I could be feeling like I was doing everything right, and still wind up with something as severe as colic that could take my horse away overnight is terrifying. So we want to make sure that we're doing our best with the simple stuff like water. And I know a lot of us are paying attention to how much water our horses are drinking, making sure that they are getting clean water, but we can do even better with the tool that I'm going to share with you today. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about something called E.H.W, which stands for electrolyzed hydrogen water. It's also sometimes called electrolyzed reduced water in the science world. There's been a lot of buzz surrounding this in the human health and wellness sort of realm for a while now. I'm sure you've seen in the store now people marketing things as alkaline water, ionized water, pH water, and these are all kind of like misnomers or it's a marketing gimmick. So like there are lots of different ways to change the alkalinity or the pH of your water. Not all of them are beneficial or have any effect at all. Ionized water, that's a weird one because the process of ionization is one thing, but what ionization really means is that your water molecule has gained an ion, and like that happens in tap water. So I'm not really sure where that comes from, but there's a lot of stuff out there that's claiming to have health benefits, but the only things that actually do have health benefits are electrolyzed hydrogen water or electrolyzed reduced water. So research began on this in the 60s approximately. Japanese scientists got really obsessed with the benefits of water that had been through an electrolysis process, which I'm going to explain in a minute. I don't know why exactly they wound up in this field of research. I was told a story a while ago that it was to mimic healing waters that they had found around the world that naturally had a higher level of hydrogen in them, so affecting your pH and affecting the alkalinity of the water. I don't know that that's entirely true. I've done some research surrounding that, and I think it was just Japanese scientists becoming pretty fascinated with this. So in the 60s, they started producing electrolyzed hydrogen water and studying the effects of it on humans, and it had massive health benefits. It took science a while to kind of catch up with what it could actually do inside of the body, but now as we do more research in humans and in animals, we're realizing it has, yeah, massive therapeutic benefits. So the way electrolysis works is you introduce an electrical charge to water through metal plates. You're going to have a positive charge in one of your metal plates, which is then your anode, and you're going to have a negative charge in one of your metal plates, which is then your cathode. And what happens when you introduce water to that electrical current is it separates it into its atomic parts, so hydrogen and oxygen. So your oxygen is going to be attracted to that positively charged anode, and your hydrogen atoms are going to be attracted to that negatively charged cathode. There are a lot of benefits of doing this to water, one of which is you have control over the pH, which stands for potential hydrogen, of your water after you've separated the two parts. So pH, more hydrogen means alkaline, less hydrogen means more acidic. So a lot of people are drinking this more alkaline water and realizing that it has health benefits. And like I said, it's something that's been researched for decades and decades now, but we're just now starting to understand how it works on a cellular level. So a few cool things happen besides the control over your pH. When you break down a water molecule into its atomic parts and then it comes back together, it forms a true water molecule. So this is hexagonal in shape, actually. And there are receptors on the outside of your cells that are designed to absorb that shape. The problem with a lot of the water that we're drinking, as far as like tap and bottled water goes, is that it has had enough time to sit around and like whatever else is in the water that the molecule actually changes shapes. So a lot of it isn't recognized by your cell. It comes up to the little hydration port and it's like, nope, that's not water. So you then send it somewhere else. A lot of the time you're flushing it out as waste. So when you are getting those true water molecules, your body is absorbing it way more. So this is actually cellular hydration. It's getting inside of the cell, and that means that your cell is able to excrete waste from it more efficiently. And this in and of itself, even if you're not messing with the acidity or the alkalinity of your water, if you're drinking completely neutral water that has that molecular structure, you're going to be seeing more benefits from the water in the first place. Optimum hydration is really hard to achieve if you're not being able to use all the water just because you only have so much space in your stomach, you know. So being able to achieve homeostasis, which is when there's a balance between the water that you're taking in and the water that you're losing, is going to be a lot more achievable if you are drinking water that has gone through an electrolysis process and has that correct molecular shape. So when we're talking about water that is more on the alkaline side and why it has health benefits, it is because there is a higher concentration of a gas called H2 inside of it. So H2O, obviously, that molecule structure is going to be two hydrogens, one oxygen. So when there's more hydrogen than there is space for oxygen, there's more, it doesn't have any more places to go to bind to oxygen. Basically, the H2O molecules are good by themselves, and then there's more hydrogen hanging out. The hydrogen will bond to itself and it will create an H2 molecule. So molecular hydrogen is actually the smallest and lightest molecule on Earth. It is also the most abundant. There is tons and tons and tons of molecular hydrogen on the planet. However, not a whole lot of it gets into our system. And when it does really amazing things. There is naturally just some H2 inside of our bodies. It's important for a lot of different processes. But when we have it in abundance, a lot of really cool things happen. The cool thing about how small it is it can actually permeate the blood-brain barrier. So the positive effects that it has on cells is not limited to your digestive tract or wherever it can go from a traditional digestion point of view. This stuff can go everywhere. It can get to every single cell in your body, which is pretty fascinating. One of the biggest benefits it has, and one of the things that has been most widely researched, is its effect on inflammation. So hydrogen in and of itself is not an anti-inflammatory, and this is one that I understand, but not really thoroughly. So I will explain it to the best of my ability. Basically, what happens when molecular hydrogen gets inside of your cell is it downregulates the expression of intercellular adhesion molecules and chemokines and cytokines. So, from what I understand, chemokines and cytokines are basically little messengers that go from cell to cell saying, hey, we've found a spot that we think needs to be inflamed. And then that triggers the release of this intercellular adhesion molecule, which basically tells cells to adhere together. So that's where you get that inflammation or that like puffiness, is those cells have fused together in that spot and they don't want to move. That's basically what I'm understanding. So that can be caused by all sorts of things. Arthritis was a big one that I was super interested in because I know that arthritis and inflammation go hand in hand. I know that lots of horses suffer from arthritis. So if we can help them combat that inflammation in the first place and, alleviate some of that pain from inflammation from arthritis specifically, that would be really cool. One that I have seen a positive effect with is allergic reactions. This is why I started using this water for my dog. He gets terrible seasonal allergies and he breaks out in itchies all over the place. Giving him this water really helped how much he was breaking out from these allergic reactions. We've, tried some other stuff. We've got him under control, but the water was a really big puzzle piece for him. And then another really big one for sport horses, inflammation in the legs. We deal with it all the time. I jump, we do ice boots, we do everything we can to combat that inflammation, but it's going to happen. So if we can start to prevent it from happening in the first place through down regulating those messengers and stuff like that, that's going to be way helpful for them, and it's going to help them from experiencing a lot of pain. And same goes for muscle distress in general. If we're like building fitness, if we're building top line muscles, like if we can avoid them becoming inflamed in the first place, that's going to be hugely beneficial. Now, the biggest one that I have actually been able to find specific research in horses surrounding is oxidative stress. So, oxidative stress takes place basically during intensive exercise. And I will explain a little bit more how this works because this is an interesting one. Basically, what happens is inside of your cell, which we'll look at another picture, there are these little things called mitochondria, and they're basically the little alchemists of your cell. That's what's responsible for taking in the fuel source, which is usually food, and turning it into usable energy. So they're like expelling electricity, essentially. They're taking in the nutrients and they're creating the energy. The thing about them is they expel what's known as free radicals. And most people know that these are bad. They don't really know why. They're actually reactive oxygen species, which are just a form of molecule. And that is what is expelled by the mitochondria when they feel stressed to produce a lot of energy at once. So, it's not going to kill you, oxidative stress. It can be damaging on a cellular level, which is why we want to pay attention that we are getting enough antioxidants so that when we are producing lots of energy at once, we're not going to see the fallout from those free radicals being produced inside of our cells. And a lot of people know this about sport horses. They want to mitigate the effects of oxidative stress, so that they generally do things like give antioxidant supplements. And they can help for sure, but they are kind of limited as far as bioavailability goes. Like I said, molecular hydrogen can pretty much go wherever in the body. It can permeate the blood-brain barrier, so there's not many places that it cannot go. And the way that this helps is actually by supporting the mitochondria, and we'll talk a little bit about how that works. So again, my favorite cell picture. There's actually a lot going on inside of cells in general, but I like this picture because all it really shows you is the nucleus and your little mitochondria, which are those little red guys. So those are the ones that are in charge of turning the food into the energy. And they get stressed out, or they have to produce too much, or sometimes they sustain damage from having to produce so much, and then they just kind of explode. And what happens is these free radicals come out. So you'll see those down here in the bottom left. And what a free radical really is and why it's damaging is because it's unbalanced. It moves around really erratically like that because it's looking for another atom to balance it. And during its search for something to, get its charge right so that it's not ping-ponging, it does. It ping-pongs around inside of a cell. So the actual movement of it damages stuff. It can damage the cell wall. It can damage all the other stuff that's going on inside of the cell. And cellular damage and cellular death is really where we see the basis of most disease. As you know, when we get cells that replicate and mutate, that's where we see cancerous growths, tumorous growths, cell necrosis. If we see cells dying in like a mass level in a particular spot, that could be like a chunk of your organ or a chunk of your muscle. So our cells are our building blocks for literally everything. And for them to function in the way that they need to, We need to make sure they don't have crazy ping pong free radicals going around damaging them. So molecular hydrogen helps balance them out. As you see, this free radical just needed a hydrogen ion. As soon as it had one, it's a water molecule. So that is something that your body knows what to do with. It can then get it out of the cell. It can process it as waste. And yeah, having the power to do this is massively helpful. The other excellent effect of drinking water that is more alkaline in nature is being able to control the acidity in your GI. So this is another one. Lots of tests have been done on humans. I did actually find a really interesting experiment that was done specifically in horses with alkaline water that I will explain. But essentially the idea is that we don't want an overly acidic environment in the GI. As we know, horses experience stomach ulcers pretty often, and they can be caused by a lot of stuff. And I think a lot of people like to say it's, stress related or it's environmental. But the truth is, the way that we generally feed horses is not conducive to the way that they're built. They're really designed to be on a forage diet, which means they're constantly eating, which means they are constantly producing bile and stomach acid. The way that we feed them, as far as like meals throughout the day go, I know like my horse has grain in the morning and grain in the late afternoon. They're really not designed for those high caloric loads and then for those periods of time where they're not eating. So this can cause problems pretty easily. Yeah, I read that up to 90% of horses experience gastric ulcer syndrome at some point throughout their life. And it is largely due to the fact that there's inconsistencies in when they're producing the stomach acid and bile, and when there's nothing for it to work on, but they're still producing it, that creates an extremely acidic environment inside of their stomach. The other thing I should mention is that most tap water or source water, well water, probably your hose water at your barn, will wind up more on the acidic side than that neutral potential hydrogen. I guess I should say really quick, the pH scale runs from 1 to 14. Neutral pH is right in the middle at 7, and most tap waters are going to be more around like 6, 5.5 to 6. So they are acidic in nature, and the reason for this is actually to protect the pipes. Like, these are systems in place to protect the infrastructure of our city, not so much to take our health into account. So they are taking in water that's slightly acidic on top of the fact that they're not really designed to be eating those larger gut loads at a time. So when we give our horses water that is not only rich in molecular hydrogen, helping them on a cellular level, we're also creating a less acidic environment in their gastrointestinal tract, which is super huge. The study, which I will link below this video, I'm actually going to link a bunch of studies that you guys can go check out on your own. Basically, all the information that I got for this video will be down there. But this one study that they did in Japan, they took 2 control groups of horses, 5 horses for 1 week were given nothing but their source water, their barn water, and then the other 5 horses were given alkaline water at 8.5%, or I'm sorry, at level 8.5 pH. And they did that for a week, and then they actually introduced like an ulcer causing agent. I don't know what that was. It was like, was it coffee and cigarettes? Anyway, they induced ulcers in these horses, and the ones who were drinking the regular source water, they all got ulcers. And I think 3 of them wound up needing medication to deal with the ulcers. The group of horses that was drinking molecular hydrogen water, I think 3 of them got ulcers and they didn't need any sort of medication to deal with them, which is huge. That's like a very clear night and day difference. Like, if we can be preventing these sort of things from happening, that's huge. And a lot of people like ignore ulcers in general, like how many times have you seen an owner be like, oh, he's just girthy, or like, oh, he just gets upset when he's brushed. This is one of the changes that I've actually seen in my horse already, because I kind of suspected that he might have a little stomach ulcer. He was out of work for a while because, like I said, he got diagnosed with kissing spine. After about 4 days of me giving him this alkaline water, he's stopped being moody when I brushed him. And those are little things that you notice after you've been working with your horse for a while. Like, if he's moody when I brush him in one place, I can usually, assume that there's either mental weirdness going on there or physical weirdness. And this is something that has already resolved itself in just a few days of giving him this alkaline water. So massively powerful. And not to mention, this next part's super interesting. There's only one FDA approved ulcer medication for horses. So I've actually never used this, so I don't know if I'm saying it right, but omeprazole. And what that does is it inhibits their proton pumps inside of their stomach, which is basically the thing that is producing that stomach acid and bile. Um, I understand this is harmful because my mom actually suffers from acid reflux, like really bad. She has my whole life. And she's taken a lot of prescribed medication, over the counter medication that does essentially the same thing that this is doing. So it shuts down your bile ducts, and it tells them not to produce any more acidic digestive liquid, right? Which is a good short-term fix and can help a horse heal from an ulcer. But the more often you send, medication that's altering the way that your body is working, the more often you do that, you can have the opposite problem. So you're going to wind up with other gastrointestinal issues because those proton pumps are no longer functioning the way that they are supposed to because they've been told to do something different so many times. So being able to take something like hydrogen water and use it as a preventative is it just makes more sense to me. Keeping their body from becoming too acidic in its environment in general is going to help us a lot with all sorts of gastrointestinal issues. And this relates to like hindgut ulcers as well. And the other cool thing about molecular hydrogen is it's super easy for your body to get rid of. So obviously a horse has very specific pH levels at different stages of digestion to help it break down food. It has an internal system that's going to keep that from getting off kilter. So if the horse's body sees that there is too much alkalinity, too much hydrogen inside of what's being passed through the gastrointestinal system, you seriously send the molecular hydrogen to your lungs and you breathe it out. Now, this is the same for human. This is why you can't overdose on molecular hydrogen because there are so many systems in place inside of our bodies that are telling us, hey, we actually need to keep this at a more acidic pH. And it's like, oh, okay, it's fine. So we just release it literally through breathing. So you really don't have any risk as far as like causing them harm. They'll just get rid of it if they have too much of it, which is pretty cool. Now, this one I find super interesting. I could not find any definitive research on it, but I wanted to talk about it anyway, because one of the things that I find super terrifying, and I don't know why I'm afraid of this because I've never actually experienced it, is laminitis. Like, if you've seen videos or pictures of laminitis, it's terrifying. And it's another one that can be a death sentence for horses. Like, if they can't come back from it, if they can't walk ever again, this is a huge issue. One of the precursors to laminitis is usually equine metabolic disorder, which functions a lot like diabetes in humans. So it's basically a horse, usually due to dietary issues like too many luscious green fields or whatever. They consume so much sugar, and this can happen from our high carbohydrate feeds as well. You force those mitochondria to use this as a fuel source so many times that we become, resistant to our own insulin. Thank you. And this is a huge problem. Yeah, this is where metabolic disorders come up. And there has been so much research done surrounding molecular hydrogen for use in type 2 diabetes in humans. And they've had phenomenal results, just really crazy. And a lot of people don't want to believe it. They're like, it's water. I don't see how this could possibly work. But molecular hydrogen does actually have the ability to restore blood glucose levels and lipid levels. And this is where you see your insulin resistance taking place. So it kind of just balances things out. So again, preventative. Obviously, we don't want to get to the point where we're already dealing with equine metabolic disorder or with laminitis. But if we can make sure that it doesn't get there, that's even better. The other thing about laminitis is it's actually inflammation in between the hoof wall and the bone. So if we can cut down on that inflammation, way less risk of laminitis, way less risk of losing your best friend. So that's good too. So those are all the ways that alkaline water can be extremely beneficial. The other thing I want to talk about is the byproduct of creating this alkaline water is highly acidic water. And that has all sorts of uses as well. The byproduct, when it is at pH levels of 2.5 and below, is actually considered hypochlorous acid water. And it has crazy sanitizing effects. This is another one that I will share studies on as far as like surface bacteria goes. I did find one specifically about using it for cleaning wounds, which we're going to talk about as well. And it's, yeah, equally as effective as bleach, none of the harmful side effects. And it's actually like not great to consume, but it's not toxic to consume either. So having it in an environment where it could be spilled or accidentally consumed or whatever isn't dangerous because it's still just water. So yeah, wound lavage is a big one. The study that I have shows basically the bacterial culture growth in a wound sample on a couple of horses. And I've been using it like this for my dogs for years, for myself as well. It's just way less intimidating to me than using something that is a chemical derivative. The cool part about it is, like I said, it's still just water. So it's not going to damage any healthy skin tissue. It's also not dangerous if it does get into your bloodstream. It kills all sorts of surface bacteria, viruses, as well as fungi. So this is a really powerful way to clean things. I also use it around the barn for other stuff, like I use it to clean my bits. I spray it on my girths after I ride just to make sure there's no bacteria there. If you have a saddle pad that you use like once and it maybe not quite time to wash it yet, spray it with that just to make sure that it's not harboring any bacteria that's going to be harmful to your horse's skin. It's a really great tool to have around the barn in general. And then the next one is hoof care, which this one I do have personal experience with as well. Recently, my horse had a hoof abscess. And as you know, those can be a pain to deal with. So we did the normal thing. We pulled a shoe off. We hoped that it would rupture on its own in a couple days. It totally did. And normally you're taught to poultice with something that is antibacterial. I know I've seen the iodine and sugar, animal intex pads, any way to make sure that you're not letting that bacteria as the hoof abscess drains grow out of control is super helpful. So yeah, I used just a regular gauze poultice with this 2.5 water and it did really well. It cleared up really fast actually. So that went really well. The other thing that I haven't personally used it with, but have read several accounts of it having really good effects on is thrush. So there was this one account of this guy who said he had a horse with really persistent thrush and they, tried every over-the-counter medication that they could, every trick in the book, and this thrush just kept coming back and he's complaining about the smell. I know you guys know that smell. And he wound up getting a hold of some hypochlorous acid water through a friend of his who used electrolyzed water and it cleared it up like that. He said a couple days of soaking it in just 2.5 water and it was gone forever. And I think that's so cool. Like, I love the idea that we can replace chemicals with water, not only effectively, but to do it more effectively. That's super cool to me. So overall, we're talking about more optimum hydration. We're talking about decreasing inflammation. We're talking about combating oxidative stress. Body acidity in general is good to keep from getting out of control. Acidic environments in general are where we see a disease start happening. So gastrointestinal health is obviously a big one. You can use it to care for your wounds. You can use it for hoof abscesses and thrush and for cleaning bits. So overall, having this electrolyzed water at your disposal in your horse care tool bag is massively helpful. So now you're probably thinking, how do I get this water? Let me take a sip of my water and then I will tell you. This is a long time of talking. So this is where it gets interesting because I, like I said, have been using electrolyzed hydrogen water in my own healthcare regimen for years now. I know the proof is in the pudding. It's been super helpful for me as someone who is a total fitness nerd. I ride, and my partner is actually a weightlifter. So we're a pretty healthy household. We pay a lot of attention to what we eat. And we were like that before this water was in our lives. We were both going to the gym pretty regularly. And we both started drinking it at the same time and both noticed like massive energy up, like up levels, just, more clarity as far as like our headspace went, like all of these cool things. And these are things that I'm starting to see in my horse as he starts consuming this water as well. It's stuff I've noticed in my dog as well. So I've been working with it for a long time. And I've been working with it by way of a countertop water electrolysis machine. So there are tons of these on the market. They're all very competitive with each other. Obviously, there's, good ones and bad ones. We'll talk about the difference and how we can outfit our barns with them specifically, because a lot of these are not designed to go through the kind of volume that you're going to need to give your horse this as a drinking water. I will say before we dive into how the machines work that it doesn't have to be the only water that your horse drinks. And they say this about humans as well. Like if you're consuming a few glasses of this per day, getting that amount of molecular hydrogen in your system is going to be super beneficial. A lot of people don't want to drink other water after they've experienced this water, which I'm one of them. But as far as having a health benefit for your horses, you don't have to be stressed out if they're still, drinking out of troughs that you fill with a hose or whatever. What I've been doing is making sure that my horse has one 5-gallon bucket of it at all times in his stall, and then he can kind of pick. But even at that volume, most of your countertop machines are not going to stand up to that 5 gallons a day, especially if you're, using the 2.5 water for other things. So we had to make sure that we could find something that was going to stand up to that sort of use. So I work with a company called E.R.W, and they are super fascinating. I told you that they had that people had started researching molecular hydrogen and its therapeutic benefits in Japan back in the 60s. And E.R.W was actually one of the pioneering companies that started this research and that wanted to get this water to people, because the family that founded the company, they're just really passionate about it. They realized what massive health benefits it had for them and their family, and they really just wanted to share it. So they've been doing research. They are actually certified medical devices, their water ionizers are, in Japan, which is extremely impressive in and of itself. The process of getting something certified as a medical device in Japan is the most rigorous process out of any country. So in Japan, it took about 12 years for them to get their certification. In the US, for something to get certified, it takes like 5 to 7 years. Other countries are more strict than the US, but that's kind of like you're in between. So they did work for 12 years to get certified as medical devices. And E.R.W is the only water ionizer on the market that is certified as a medical device. So they have been thoroughly inspected. On here, you're going to see some certifications. These are really water quality certifications, and another one is for their production facility. So they have really strict guidelines in Japan as far as environmental impact in production. So the E.R.W, where they produce their machines, their facility is state of the art. It really is a step above anything I've ever seen. And they have been pretty much, industry leading standard as far as water ionizers go for a really long time. A lot of copycats have tried to emulate what they do and just can't, because E.R.W has been in it from the beginning. They're a really excellent company. So a few things that you want to look for in a water ionizer in general, and this is for your home use or for barn use, is that the plates are actually solid. So a lot of people will use like a graded plate or a slotted plate like that, and they'll claim that the water will actually be exposed to more metal surface area. What it's actually going to do is break down the metals more. So in general, electrolysis doesn't go very well unless you have some sort of electrolysis enhancer. In this case, it's usually salt. So there will be like a little tank in your water machine that introduces salt into the mixture so that the electrolysis can go better. The electrolysis enhancer does lead to breakdown of metals, specific metals, over time, and it will go a lot faster if there are any sort of slates, like grates or slits in the plates themselves. You can get calcium buildup that can fill up those plates, and yeah, it can just go really wrong unless you have a nice solid piece of metal, which you'll see in that bottom slide there. There is one solid one. The other thing that you really want to pay attention to is what material your plate is made out of. So platinum coated titanium is what E.R.W works with. And the reason that they do that is because platinum is really good at conducting electricity, as well as it does not break down much at all over time. It is a noble metal that resists oxidation and corrosion much better than other metals. In fact, in 1992, the Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare determined that platinum is the only safe metal for water ionizers. So it's a big deal. Other metals, they just can break down over time. There are metals that are better conductors, but as far as standing the test of time, this is really what you're going to want inside of a machine, especially if you're using it at a volume like we would be with our horses. So the diagram that I showed you earlier was pretty simple. It just showed one cathode and one anode, and that gives you the idea of how electrolysis works. But in all reality, if you are producing large volumes of water, you're going to want as many plates as possible. So you are going to need like lots of cathodes and anodes. Another thing to take into account is how the power supply is getting to those cathodes and anodes. So first of all, yes, pay attention to how many plates are in your machine and if that aligns with the amount of water that you plan to take out of it. The other thing is to make sure that you have, that steady electricity supply. A lot of water ionizers on the market will use what's called a switch power supply, and I'll explain these in a minute. What you really need is a transformer power supply that can give a steady amount of electricity to these plates, because if they waver at all, then you're going to be losing some of those molecules, and then the resulting alkaline and acidic water is gonna vary as far as its actual pH level goes. So to get something consistent, you really want a good power supply. So this is where we nerd out a little bit. I'm also not an engineer or an electrician or anything like that, but I wanted to know what the difference was between a switch power supply and a transformer power supply. So at the top, you're going to see the transformer power supply. That basically means that it's missing that little switch part that you see in the bottom diagram. And a lot of machines will market themselves as like energy efficient because they do have a switch power supply, but what that's actually going to do is deliver an inconsistent charge to the plate, and then you're going to be losing some of your atoms, so you're not going to get as pure of a quality water coming out the other side. This one I'm not going to go too far into because I know it's kind of nerdy, but it's pretty cool to understand. So there's those. Now this is E.R.W's flagship machine. This is what I have in my kitchen, the one that I have had for years. It has 8 electrolysis plates. It creates 7 different pH levels of water. This one does have specialized electrolysis enhancer that you have to buy through the company. It is run by an internal computer. It is self-cleaning. When I say self-cleaning, what it actually does is it will periodically reverse the polarity of the plates so that there's not too much buildup of calcium or anything that can start happening inside of the machine. And it can tell when there's any sort of buildup on the plates, and it goes through a self-cleaning cycle. It's pretty cool. It talks to you. I definitely think like everybody should have one of these in their house. But the only reason I'm explaining this to you is because I want to show you the difference between this and what you would want for like a barn application. So this does have solid platinum coated titanium plates. It does have a transformer power supply. The other thing is that all of these machines come with a 5-year warranty. They're designed to stand the test of time. There are machines in Japan that are still going strong from like their first round of production in the 70s. So that's how long these machines can really last. Like we're coming up on 50 years here. And as long as you take care of them, they really will stand the test of time. So this is what you would want to actually put in your barn. This is also by E.R.W. This is called the Leveluk Super 501. And it is actually the only industrial strength water electrolysis machine on the market. Most people, if they want to use electrolyzed water in like an agricultural sense or on a larger scale, they'll actually have engineers build them some sort of electrolysis machine at their facility, which would cost tens and thousands of dollars. So this is a really great middle ground. This is what I would suggest to businesses like restaurants. A lot of hotels use them for the 2.5 water for cleaning. Some smaller farms, like in an agricultural sense, will use them. This water actually has massive benefits for plants, which I will do another video about. But this is the one that you're gonna want to use if you're going through like gallons and gallons and gallons of water per day. It actually has 12 electrolysis plates inside of it. It does create all seven different kinds of pH water, which I will go over in a separate video as well. But just so you know, if you were using this in like a multiple horse application, this is the guy that you're gonna want in your barn. Same deal as far as the internal computer, the self-cleaning, the transformer power supply, the plates are the same. The thing that really sets this apart is the fact that you have a lot of control over the pressure of water that it's able to handle and that it's able to put out. So this can produce about 2 gallons per minute of both alkaline water and acidic water. So you'll see there that there are actually two hoses. On the one that I showed you before, the at-home one, there's a main hose for alkaline water and there's like a tiny hose for hypochlorous acid water. This one can produce hypochlorous acid water at that same rate of 2 gallons per minute, which is a huge deal. That's actually a lot of water. So if you think about filling a 5-gallon bucket for your horse, that's going to take less than 2.5 minutes, which is really not bad considering the quality of water that you are getting out of it. The other really big difference between this one and the at-home model is that you can make your own electrolysis enhancer for this. So that's something that you're going to be going through a little bit faster when you're producing large volumes of water. So you can actually just make your own with sea salt. And there's a really big tank on the back of this one that you can put your own mixture in, which saves you on a lot of money having to order through the company or anything like that. It is a little bit heavier duty of a filter. These do come with water filters, but filtering is really not their main feature. So they do have a really simple water filter, but I would say if you're super concerned about filtering things out of your water, you would want to go with a pre-filter. They keep their filters pretty simple, mostly because this is a global company and source waters are going to vary so much depending upon where you are in the world that you can't really make a one size fits all filter. So if that's something you would like to look into, I also have resources for that. But what we're mainly talking about is getting our horses the benefit of that molecular hydrogen and of that alkaline water. So this is the only thing that I've found, honestly, on the market. And weirdly enough, I find it inside of the company that I've already been working for years. And I am in the works of getting one of these for the barn that I board at right now. I would love to see more horses benefit from, consuming the water. I know that it's going to save on a lot of weird products that people usually buy around the barn. I am definitely going to spread the word and help people replace some of those toxic chemical-based products with something more natural as far as the hypochlorous acid water goes. There's actually a lot of other benefits that I didn't even talk about because I feel like I've been talking for a very long time. One that I will say really quick that I've been super enjoying is you can create 11.5 alkaline water, and it is a natural detangler. It works really well on manes and tails. It also works really well for like a pre-show shine, post bath. If you use it, it actually functions kind of like conditioner. So there are all sorts of uses for this water. And there is different levels of alkalinity. So you can start your horse a little bit more toward the neutral side so that they don't, go straight into consuming a ton of molecular hydrogen because you don't want to shock their system or anything. So you can change over pretty slowly. And this gives you so much control and it gives you so many tools that you're going to be able to use, not just for drinking water, but all the way around the barn. I also think that every human should be drinking this water. So it would be an investment in not only your horse's health, but also your personal health. I know that I'm going to try and get people at the barn to drink this water as well, because I know the benefits of it. So it's easy for me to want to share. And if at this point you are expecting the big sales pitch, you are going to be sorely disappointed because that's definitely not how I run things. With this company and this water and these machines, all I really like to do is present the information and let it speak for itself. because it has really had such amazing benefits for me and my animals already. Um, I think that curiosity will lead people to decide if they want this for themselves or not. I am a distributor for E.R.W, so if this is something that you're interested in getting for your barn or for your house, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to get you all the information about prices and financing and, how to hook it up and what kind of water sources it works with and doesn't and all of the things. So I have plenty more information, but the point of today was really just to give you a base level of understanding and share what an awesome tool I think this is going to be, because I'm super excited to see what it does in my horse life specifically. Obviously, I already know that it's great for my health, for my family's health, and for my dog's health. So I'm just excited to build a community of people who see the value here and just want to nerd out about this water because I seriously find it so fascinating. So hopefully you feel well informed. I'm pretty sure my voice is about to give out on me, so I'm going to cut it short. But like I said, please reach out to me if you want any more information. If you're interested in getting one of these for yourself, the other thing about E.R.W is that you do actually have to buy their products through a distributor. Another really cool story for another really cool video. But if you want more information or if you would like to buy one of these products, please shoot me a message, shoot me an email, let me know. I would love to see more people implementing this in their animal care lives. So thank you for taking time to watch, and I will talk to you soon.